It is where it is intentionally. It is where it is according to planning and according to purpose. Now, what I discovered in my research is that sometimes a vine dresser or an owner of a vineyard would plant a tree, another tree from another kind of fruit in the middle of the vineyard so that the taste of that fruit would diffuse into the grapes, ladies and gentlemen. In other words, the tree is planted in an environment where it can influence the surrounding plant life because of its presence in the vineyard. In other words, the fig being in the vineyard will change significantly the landscape and influence the taste of the vine. Now watch this. In addition to that, the tree is granted the privilege of being planted in fertile soil. Okay. So here's a fig tree in a vineyard with every advantage. It's cared for, it's provided for. As I began to consider the blessing that was bestowed upon this tree, it got me to asking some critical questions. Can I share with you some of my musings on the issue? How is it that we end up some of the places we end up? What accounts for the present location that we find ourselves today and at various points in our lives? How did we get here? It was then that I was reminded, ladies and gentlemen, where we are and where we're going is never a matter of accident or coincidence. It is not happenstance or the result of fate. Nothing happens to me or to you. Nothing that concerns me or you. Nothing that's connected to me or to you is left up to chance. Is there anybody here today who's aware that the only reason you're alive today, the only reason that you're here today, the only reason that you didn't break down this past year, the only reason you didn't give up this past year, the only reason you did not turn your back and just decide to die is because you were planted where you were? This past year, you had all kinds of trials and tribulations. You had trouble and turmoil. You had tumult and turbulence. But, ladies and gentlemen, that was all part of being planted. You were harassed and annoyed. You were perplexed and persecuted. You were distressed and discouraged. You were insulted and inconvenienced. But the truth is, in spite of all that, you were still planted. Your time in the school of hard knocks was a course that you were registered for. You were planted right where you are. Not only were you planted, but provisions were made for you. Can I just get a witness in this house? In other words, you were coddled and cared for. You were pampered and prodded and plotted. Your needs were met. Your health was maintained. Your finances were regulated. Your family was secured. And even your enemies were kept in check. Can I just get a witness in here? That they defamed you last year, but they couldn't defeat you last year. They delayed you last year, but they couldn't deny you last year. Ladies and gentlemen, they declined you last year, but they couldn't destabilize you last year. And they disturbed you, but they couldn't destroy you last year. That's because God planted you. The tree was planted in its location by design. In other words, where the tree was located was part of a master plan. And there were expectations connected to the planting of this tree. It was not just there for decoration's sake. Please note, ladies and gentlemen, that a vineyard is mostly, listen to me, a horizontal environment. What did I say? It's a what? In other words, I looked at some vineyards and I did a little research. Whenever vines or whenever grapes grow out of the ground, Unless you prop them up, they can't stand up. You know that, right? They grow and they just lay there. Am I right? So here is a vertical tree in a horizontal environment. Oh my God. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, the owner of the vineyard situated the tree in an environment where it would always be looked up to. Are you listening to me? In other words, one could say that the owner put in his vineyard something for his vineyard to look up to. Y'all still not with me? The only reason you're still standing today is because God put you in a position to be a witness and to set an example. Yeah. God put you somewhere where you would have to stand up when other people are bowing down. He put you in a place, ladies and gentlemen, where you could keep your head up when other folk are looking down. He put you in a place where you could give a favorable testimony and to show forth the praises of him who brought you out of darkness into his marvelous light. But ladies and gentlemen, the reason that this fig tree is really planted in the vineyard is that it was supposed to produce fruit. What did I say? Produce what? Listen. The fig tree was planted with the expectation that after a season, the owner would come and get some figs from his fig tree. Am I right? In other words, the owner says to himself, not only can I make some money with my vineyard, but I'm going to throw in a little extra and get some money from this fig tree. Are you following me? The fig tree is supposed to improve the owner's bottom line. It's supposed to bring in additional revenue. Yeah, that's the owner. I'd like to pause and consider the theological significance of this tree. You got to put this story, ladies and gentlemen, back in the context of Luke 13. So Jesus is talking to his disciples, and by this time, thousands of people are gathering around. And they bring news to him that the Tower of Siloam fell on these Galileans. A few Galileans were murdered or were killed when a tower fell on them. Now, Jesus knows that the people who are bringing him the news, he understands what their thinking is, what their mentality is. Can I share with you their mentality?